Matt Killian is Senior Foreign Affairs Officer at the State Department. He's a former FBI investigator and is the State Department's coordinator combating cyberscams with a heavy emphasis on Southeast Asia. Matt has his degrees from the University of Vermont and George Washington University. And Matt, we're looking forward to hearing your remarks as always. Nice to see you.
All right, thanks everyone, and thanks Mac from Lexington for having us here today. As mentioned, I'm Matt Killian with the State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs. And you might be wondering why we would be here from the Bureau, also known as Drugs and Thugs. So we are one of the many organizations at the State Department who has part of the role of protecting American citizens from threats abroad. So you heard from our CDP colleagues who are looking at kind of how we're working with US companies, working with US businesses, working with innovation. But a lot of us are also looking at how do we protect from threats emanating from all domains, including the cyber domain. So just a quick overview of what INL is, what we do. We have a couple different roles in the State Department. The first is that we're responsible for transnational organized crime policy. So we look at the threat landscape globally and we figure out what are the threats and how do we resource and move staff and position assets to combat those threats. We work on everything from drug trafficking, as our name suggests, anti-money laundering, cybercrime, border management, maritime security. So a pretty big remit. We also work to support US law enforcement operations overseas. That means helping build the relationships with foreign governments, helping them understand the foreign policy considerations, the risks, the objectives, and finally to help facilitate the good work that they do. The third function that we serve is providing training, equipment, and technical assistance to foreign police, prosecutors, judges, border forces, and others that help us in combating threats that protect both American citizens and those from their countries. So to talk about why I'm here today, I want to talk about a threat largely from Southeast Asia, but increasingly globally on cyber-enabled fraud, or specifically scams. So just quick show of hands, how many people in this room have received a questionable message, text, WhatsApp? Yeah, probably all of us. And it only takes one moment of curiosity or confusion or loneliness to respond, and then you can get pulled in. So scammers are using a number of different schemes, from investment fraud, particularly cryptocurrency investment fraud, impersonation scams, romance scams, sextortion, you name it. Give a couple quick examples of what this might look like. As many of us have probably received rather, you might just get a random text that's like, hey, it's been a while, how are you doing? From an unknown number. And if you respond, maybe that starts a conversation. Maybe you're lonely and it's just outreach, or maybe you got a new phone and you're not sure, is this a contact that I lost? Is this someone from the past? You don't know. And the scammers are trying to build trust. They're trying to build confidence so that when you do start that conversation, once you get far enough down the road, then they can employ whatever tactic they're seeking to try to get something from you. Another method you might see is on dating apps or dating websites that people, age-old problem now, you can create fake profiles. I don't think I need to explain much more than that. That can lead you in a lot of different directions. But I think the bigger problem with all of this is, regardless of the initial outreach, a lot of what they're trying to do is sell you on a fake investment. And so what we've seen are all of these different methods of outreach leading to the same goal of getting you to invest in some sort of money-making scheme, or perhaps from a romantic standpoint to help a person that you have developed some sort of an emotional connection with, with their finances or with something else. There was one anecdote I heard, and I hear a lot in this job, that really stuck with me. Is I was a farmer in the Midwest who was helping run a farm kind of co-op to help pool the resources of all the farming communities around him. And so he stumbled upon one of these schemes, and it was like a fake crypto investment company. So he invested a small amount of money, I think it was a couple $1,000s. And within a couple months, he got a like 300% return on his investment. So we thought, okay, this is actually working. He literally got money into his account. And he thought, okay, I'm gonna really invest a lot more now. So he invested hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then so on and so forth, he gets to a point where he's invested a significant amount of the co-op savings. And that's when the scammer said, okay, we've got him. They took almost everything they had, cut ties, closed the accounts, took the money and ran. And he's left with nothing. So like just to demonstrate like how profound this can be and how much it can hurt rural communities, any community in the US, whether as a human, as a group, as a business. And also wanted to just kind of demonstrate the point, this doesn't just affect vulnerable populations. I think sometimes we think, oh, it's really only affecting the elderly or other groups, but really it's impacting Americans from all 50 states and all walks of life. So quickly, I just want to level set to give an overview of the threat landscape from Southeast Asia and why we're so focused on this region. So from the past several years, transnational criminal organizations based in Southeast Asia have been targeting Americans and defrauding us of what we believe to be at least $12.5 billion a year, just from those countries, or just from Southeast Asia, rather. We know that's a conservative estimate because of the stigma attached to people reporting and the different inconsistent streams of reporting, whether that be through FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, or FTC reporting, or state and locals. There's just not really a good repository to really capture the full spectrum. But for broader context, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime released a report actually this week outlining that losses from countries in Southeast and East Asia and Oceania ran between 88 and 112 or 114 billion. So if we're the largest market for these scams and East Asia and the Pacific is being scammed at that rate, you can almost certainly assess that we are being scammed at far above the $12.5 million mark per year. So what makes it worse is to fuel these scams, traffickers have recruited over 400,000 people from 80 different countries with fraudulent job offers, exploiting them in forced labor and forced criminality, which are forms of human trafficking, to facilitate these online scams in industrial scale compounds, primarily in Burma, Laos, and Cambodia, and to a lesser degree in the Philippines. That said, as countries like Cambodia and the Philippines have cracked down, we've seen scammers evolving and innovating to more decentralized models that no longer rely exclusively on these large-scale compounds, which makes them much harder to detect. We can't see them necessarily on a satellite. They might be using hotels or residences or business parks that are of a smaller scale. And we're seeing this expand all across Southeast Asia, South Asia, and parts of West Africa. But we know it's happening globally. I mean, it's too lucrative not to. And so as people are learning the methods, especially the people who've been trafficked, and realize how much money they can make doing this, is far beyond what you can make in any normal industry. So as a lot of these people are coming back and trying to restart their lives, some of them are realizing that, out of just desperation, this is a skill set that they've developed, it's lucrative, and there are other people who can learn from it. When you add that to existing scam networks and rings around the world, a lot of us kind of grew up hearing about, Nigerian print scams and all that. A lot of those types of scams still exist. And so as they converge with these new methodologies, and you add the use of AI and tech and a lot more sophisticated platforms, it's far, far, far more dangerous. So in response to this threat, President Trump signed Executive Order 14390, which is combating cybercrime, fraud, and predatory schemes against American citizens to drive a whole-of-government approach. While the executive order focuses on 3 crime types, cybercrime, cyber-enabled fraud, or scams, and financially motivated sextortion, the majority of US losses stem from these Southeast Asian-based scams. So the Department of State, our task is to engage with international partners, primarily foreign governments, to demand enforcement action against these transnational criminal organizations operating within their borders, and demand greater law enforcement cooperation with the United States. We're also tasked with applying consequences for those who do not cooperate, and rallying partners and allies to join us to achieve both ends. So to accomplish this, we're looking at 4 kind of big picture lines of effort. The first, which is sort of the State Department's bread and butter, is a targeted global diplomatic campaign to mobilize countries to elevate the issue and demand action to address these shared threats. The second is imposing costs on transnational criminal organizations, criminal actors, their enablers, and complicit officials who provide safe haven for these scams. This includes supporting asset seizures, visa restrictions, and where appropriate, criminal indictments and extraditions. It also includes targeted sanctions to help change the behavior and deny resources from criminal actors. One action I do want to highlight was in October 2025, the Department of State worked very closely with the Department of Treasury to sanction what was called the Prince Group, which was one of the largest kind of criminal enterprises based in Cambodia. And actually just last month, we expanded that sanction to include additional individuals and entities that were derivative of that initial sanction. So this organization had set up in Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh, and had kind of far-reaching operations around the region as far as places like Palau in the Pacific. And they were using a combination of facilitators, one called Hui One Pay that we also went after using Section 311 of the Patriot Act, again, our colleagues at the Treasury under FinCEN. But basically these organizations were creating like fictitious, or not fictitious, but illicit online marketplaces where you were able to buy and sell criminal services, launder large amounts of money, not just from scams, but even from, as posted on Treasury's website, from DPRK actors who are using these payment platforms to launder, billions of dollars in cryptocurrency. A lot of it stolen from U.S. victims. In another example, we've leveraged the department's Transnational Organized Crime Rewards Program to offer a reward for up to $10 million for information leading to the financial disruption of Taichung scam centers in Burma. So just two examples of tools that we've used so far, but that we can apply more broadly as we try to face this threat. Third, we advanced operational law enforcement cooperation, intelligence sharing, and where needed, as mentioned, we provide training and equipment to ensure that we can work collaboratively and interoperably with foreign partners to combat these threats. This includes supporting DOJ's Scam Center Strike Force, providing real-time information sharing mechanisms, and targeted foreign assistance programs to help meet those needs. One of the issues that we're facing is that the criminals are using AI, they're using, again, as I mentioned, cryptocurrency, and a lot of other highly technical capabilities to outwit and outpace law enforcement around the world. So part of what we're looking at is how do we leverage those same tools from US companies and US innovation to basically keep pace with those criminals and constantly chase them and shut down the tools that they're using. And finally, our fourth line of effort is prevention and outreach. So this includes engaging with the private sector and civil society partners in this fight, raising public awareness of our citizens, working with tech platforms to identify and remove scam infrastructure, and partnering with financial institutions to detect and block illicit transactions. While it's under this fourth pillar that I'm here today, we need support in all of these efforts. The issue's too big for the executive branch to tackle alone, and we need to work across all executive branch agencies, across the legislative branch, with the private sector, think tanks, educational institutions, and the media. We need to leverage American innovation from outside the government to match and innovate the innovation of these criminal groups. But we also need to highlight the issue for the American people, not just through traditional mainstream media or press releases from the federal government that no one's going to read, but through all media outlets, through faith-based organizations, educational institutions, associations, and word of mouth. And conferences like this one are a great opportunity to share both our work that we're doing to protect the American people at the State Department, but also share a little bit more about how we can help you and work together with you to achieve that goal. So thank you again to the Lexington Institute for having us here today, and thank you all for taking the time to listen.